Okay, so how do we get out of an artistic rut? What I mean by a rut is, you might call it a plateau, where you're growing, you're growing, you're growing, you're growing, you're getting better, and then you flatline. And then you're like, I'm not getting any better. So, let's see, the first thing you could do is define exactly what you mean by rut. Where are you experiencing the rut? And you could also invert that question and say, where am I not experiencing that rut? So for me, I'm experiencing a rut in my animal drawing. So specifically drawing animals from observation. And then, to put a more positive spin on it, let's see, where am I not experiencing a rut? Well, I'm not experiencing a rut in the other areas of my life, which are martial arts. I'm going like this in martial arts, so I'm still getting better with that. With boxing, I'm getting better at boxing. With reading books and just, generally becoming a more intelligent person and learning every day, I'm doing better at that. With my eating habits, I'm doing fine. So and my sleep is going pretty well. My relationships are doing pretty well. It's not like I'm going through a divorce or that I've had like a friend betray me or something. So first of all, I'm just going to invert it and say, okay, well, there's a lot of areas in which I'm not in a rut. It's just this really specific area in which I feel like I'm in a rut. And then more specifically, in art, am I experiencing a rut in all areas of art? Well, no. I'm pretty dang good at drawing boxes. I'm pretty good at drawing cylinders. I'm pretty good at drawing spheres. And I'm also pretty good at copying. Pretty good at drawing directly from observation, at least in terms of just a one-to-one translation. So there's a lot of things that are going well. The problem I'm having is that I'm challenging myself. I'm pushing myself to draw animals from observation, and animals are hard because they're not like cubes, which are just, they don't have any personalities, they don't have any life. Animals are difficult. So it's not really that I'm in a rut like everywhere, it's just in this one specific area. And why? Because it's something that's challenging and it's new. And the only reason that I'm in a rut is because I'm pushing myself to do something new and scary. So just recognize that it might be good that you're in a rut, or you feel like you're in a rut, because that means you're challenging yourself. That means you are ready to do something new. It means you're ready to push forward and break through a wall. Like with art, a lot of times, or any pursuit, anything that you're challenging yourself and that's really hard. With any hard task, you're going to run into, like, you're walking along, getting better, and then you'll run into a wall. How do I get through this wall? And a lot of times people will, they'll look around the wall, and, well, you can't get around the wall. No matter how far you go, you can't get around it. You can't climb up it, right? So you'll either turn around and give up on the path, or you have to break through it, right? So how do you break through a wall? That's really what when we say rut, another way to look at it is just, you're hitting a wall. The good thing about hitting a wall is that it means you're moving along the path. As you go along the path, you're gonna hit a wall. If you're not hitting walls, it might feel okay, but that might mean also that you're not challenging yourself. So if you're gonna ask, how could being in a rut, how could feeling like you're in a rut be a good thing? Well, that means you're moving forward. That means you're challenging yourself. If you're not encountering any walls, that should be a warning sign to you that you're not pushing yourself hard enough, or that you've really plateaued, that it might not be that you're in a rut so much as you've moved forward enough that you've encountered an obstacle. And the good thing about obstacles is that in overcoming the obstacle, you'll get better, right? An obstacle is just, so say you're working on your art fundamentals, say you're working on, let's see, things like lighting, things like shape, things like form, things like perspective, things like line. And now, Well, when you're starting out, you're just working to make a straight line, and then you learn how to make a straight line, and then you try making boxes, and then you encounter trouble with perspective. And so as you're moving forward, you then encounter that problem of perspective. And so that working and moving forward along the path forces you to deal with perspective in order to get to the next step, which might be lighting your forms. After you learn how to create, a 3D form, then you learn how to light it. So don't look at it as you're in a rut. Look at it as you've moved forward enough, you've leveled up enough that you've encountered a wall. That's so good, right? You're not in a rut. You've hit a wall, and that's good because that means you've moved forward along the path. And so what that means is that you've hit a wall. You're about to level up. You're about to make a huge leap in your artistic ability. You're about to have a fundamental shift in the way your mind works. And so it's simultaneously the most difficult point and the most important point. Like, it's going to be so difficult, but when you break through that wall, it's going to be like, wow, an evolution. So a lot of times the hardest times, the times of the most frustration and anger, and like, I just don't understand this. Well, that's the thing that's holding your art back. So it's like this thing that's holding you back think of it as a rope. It's a rope, like you're going forward, and it's a weight. Say it's like a weight that's tied to a rope, and you're dragging that weight along right now. But if you take a knife and think of your training, so say you need to work on perspective, right? Every time you study perspective, that's like another slice in the rope. So you're like, shh, 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 shh. You're slicing. Every study you do, slice that rope. And eventually you do enough studies, and that rope, it's sliced, and the weight is no longer tied to you. So that means you can move faster. Whereas if you never encountered the problem of perspective, if you just let perspective sit as this thing you don't understand, and you try to go forward as an artist without learning perspective, you're always going to have that weight holding you back. But if you take the time to learn it, you can cut that weight, and then you can move faster without being encumbered by that heavy weight, that burden. So, where does that leave us? Well, it puts us in a more empowering place because we're no longer looking at the rut as a rut, like this thing that we can't do anything about, this thing that we're just waiting for it to pass passively. No, it's a wall. And what can we do with walls? A wall is something you can break through, okay? It's something you can tear down. And how do we tear it down? We tear it down through study. We tear it down through targeted practice. And it might be too much for you to go do the hardest thing you need to do. If you're trying to get better at, let's say, you're trying to learn how to draw bears, okay? Well, maybe there's a lot of different types of bears. Brown bears, grizzly bears, black bears, polar bears. Maybe we pick one bear. Maybe we take the polar bear. And then, okay, well, the polar bear is a lot of parts. So maybe we just say, let's work on the polar bear's head today. And maybe another day you work on the polar bear's paw. And maybe one day the head itself is too hard, or it's you're having trouble with the eyes, so you just work on the eyes of the polar bear. So break down the problem until it's a manageable chunk, right? So instead of trying to study bears, which is actually a surprisingly large category, we just learn one type of bear, and then we just learn one part of that one type of bear. So we take the big problem, and we take it out into we break it apart into tiny pieces. So instead of having to ram ourselves into a brick wall, right? That wall we were talking about. You're just think about, it's a wall made of bricks, and we're just going to take one brick at a time. We're just going to start at the top of the wall, and we're going to take one brick, put it off. Take one brick, put it off. Take one brick, put it off. We're going to keep taking off these bricks one at a time, and then there's no wall. Whereas if you try to break down the entire wall at once, you're just going to smack into it. So let's not let's not try to tackle everything at once. Let's break apart the problem into small little bite-sized pieces that are manageable. And so that's what I'm going to do. Kind of been talking myself out of this perceived rut. Let's call it, I've hit a wall, right? So I've hit a wall in my art training, and I'm about to get over this wall by taking it down one brick at a time. So I make these videos in part because I like listening to them myself whenever I feel like I'm in a funk. I go into my own videos and I'll listen to them, and they help me remember, like when I'm in a clear state of mind, how to get over this stuff. Because when you're in the moment, it's hard to remember that, oh yeah, this is how we proceed, this is the right way to think about it. But sometimes our minds get so clouded with emotion and frustration and doubt and fear that we don't think clearly, and we forget that you can simplify things, right? So that's all I'm going to do today, is just getting out of an artistic rut. Like, don't think of it as a rut is step number one. You're not in a rut. You've hit a wall, and we're gonna break through that wall one brick at a time. So break apart the problem and tackle it, and keep going with the journey. It's hard, it's frustrating, but that's what makes it meaningful. And at the end of not at the end of the journey, but when you're down the road, when you're making a living as an artist, when people are looking up to you, right? First of all, that's not what it's about. Enjoy the process. But second of all, when you are at that place where you're operating at a high level and people are looking up to you, you can say to people who are, struggling with art that, yeah, I was there. I was really, really bad at art, and you're gonna hit these walls and you're gonna break through them. And it's not easy, and you're gonna have these moments all throughout your artistic career. There's always gonna be walls that you need to break through. They're just gonna be more advanced the more you go, and not necessarily noticeable by most viewers. They're just going to be more obvious when you're starting. But anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Keep fighting the good fight. It's not easy. It is hard, and you can do it. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to just feel like, man, I'm not sure if art is for me. It just seems so hard. It's okay to have doubt, but it's not okay to give up. All right, so keep going. Break apart the problem until you know you can do it. Break it apart until it's small enough that you can do it. Just do it one step at a time. Put on a good podcast. Put on some good music. Enjoy it. Just take a deep breath. And then go draw.